Happy as a butter clam when tides are high I sing a grateful ode to Puget Sound, the land of everything. I love it from Tulalip, from Puyallup, Squim and Pished, and to the Dosey Wallops where so many times I've fished. By winter of '68, the plunging drill bits had at last found their mark on Alaska's North Slope. Under the ice that never melts, they had tapped a black Atlantis. How large a reserve remained to be answered. Yet enough, even then, to trigger a full-scale oil rush. Boring deeply into the northern rim of the Arctic, 9 different oil companies staked their shirts on exploration wells scattered over nearly 800 square miles of frozen tundra. The problems are many. Heading the list is the Arctic itself. Ice-locked and isolated, there's also the problem of supply. And compounding the situation, an awakening national concern over the environmental implications. For having found the oil, there remained the staggering task of getting it to market. Marking the beginning of that all-out effort is Prudhoe Bay State Number 1, Atlantic Richfield and Humble Oil Company's confirmation well. The key to a $50 million gamble, which, unlocking this energy storehouse, would also trigger one of the most challenging construction efforts in the history of the world. Today, with 1/4 of the nation's energy reserves, the giant Prudhoe Bay field is only part of a vast petroliferous formation extending across the top of the North American continent. Still relatively untapped is the U.S. Naval Petroleum Reserve, also part of Alaska's North Slope. And almost unnoticed in the rush to complete the pipeline by '77 has been a rash of rich new strikes, including offshore finds in the Beaufort Sea. Findings which could double the present reserve of 10 billion barrels. This week, an exploration special, the result of 6 trips to the Arctic in pursuit of an adventure which actually began over 300 million years ago in the layered deposits of warm primeval seas, where nature created what may well be America's hydrocarbon storehouse for the next century. In 1969, Fairbanks International Airport boasted the largest airlift operation in the world, as well as the greatest concentration of C-130 aircraft. Upwards of 50 million pounds of cargo for oil and geophysical companies were flown to the North Slope of Alaska via the workhorse of the Arctic, the military assault transport known as Hercules. And Fairbanks, which was born during the pioneering impetus of one stampede, now reeled under the impact of another. As a relay point for oil activity, the supply depot resembled a wartime staging area, most of it classified as dry cargo, everything from whipped cream to drill rigs.
The Hercules was capable of carrying about 48,000-pound payload on that particular stage length. In order to move the most payload, we came up with a system of rollers on the floor and skids, steel skids. The skids were preloaded at Fairbanks, and when we'd come into Fairbanks, we'd only be on the ground long enough to refuel, take the empty skid off, and run a loaded skid on.
Flight time to Prudhoe, 1 hour, 15 minutes.
Lockheed 59er Victor, cleared to taxi runway 11, wind 1.
Barring weather and maintenance problems, each plane could make 6 round trips every 24 hours, and the action was nonstop. North of the Yukon, navigation aids were few and far between. Little to keep them informed of the weather and the whereabouts of other pilots. It was dead reckoning versus pilotage, and the greatest hazard was whiteout. Landing on frozen lakes and cleared off tundra strips, the Hercules had also pioneered the initial stages.
January 22nd, 1966, flew the first commercial Herc trips for any company from Fairbanks to Susie 1, and that was to carry the drill rig and associated supplies for one of the first exploratory wells being drilled by a private corporation on the North Slope. That turned out to be a dry hole, and then we moved those supplies later with Alaska Airlines purchased Hercules and Constellation equipment as into the discovery well at Prudhoe Bay.
Like Sagwan and Dead Horse, Prudhoe Bay was now a familiar landmark to an America whose energy drain had become a matter of national concern, and for whom the discovery of additional oil reserves had rested so heavily on the laws of chance.
The chairman of the board of Atlantic Richfield Company, Mr. R.O. Anderson, flew with us right after they had discovered that the Susie 1 well was a dry hole, and they were going to try one more well on the North Slope in the Prudhoe Bay area. If that well did not hit, then Atlantic Richfield would probably move off the slope.
Loadmasters prided themselves on how fast they could unload a plane. The record was just under 10 minutes. It took 200 to 300 flights just to keep one drill rig supplied. Going down, the pipe is put together in 30-foot sections, lifted into position from the monkey board and screwed on tight. Drilling mud helps it along the way. A clay material containing barite, it is forced down to the pipe, lubricating the drill bit. Coming back up, it carries the cuttings in suspension. Sifted out, the cuttings are a record progress, indicating proximity to payload. And here at Prudhoe, the payload lies at 10,000 feet. To minimize disturbance to the environment and to conserve oil reserves, 5 to 9 wells are drilled from each pad, bottoming out at 1 per square mile. Of the three main pools in the Prudhoe Bay unit, the largest was found to contain an estimated 10 billion barrels of recoverable oil. There are still no reserve figures available on the other two. By summer of '69, Operation Sea Lift had also established a beachhead, an operation which began in Seattle, Washington, when Puget Sound Tug and Barge and Alaska Barge and Transport put together a fleet of 41 barges and 26 tugs to deliver supplies to the North Slope, 3,269 miles away, via a route that's navigable only a few weeks out of the year. Squeezing past the offshore ice pack, they too were now part of the long haul north, unloading some 97,000 tons that first year, before the slope again became a place of shadows and darkness. To expedite the supply, an ice road was punched through to Sagwan. Built by the state of Alaska, it stretched from Livengood, an old mining town north of Fairbanks, to the heart of the oil fields, a distance of 420 miles. Subject to the fierce storms of winter, as well as the bone-jarring discomfort of breakup time, like winter haul roads everywhere, it was a temporary expedient. Impassable in summer, you wait till it's frozen over. Building a winter bridge across the Yukon, the old-timers had used willow like reinforcing steel, freezing it solid. Substituting steel cable, the Highway Department had applied the same principle. But once the rivers broke up, that was it. During the 6 weeks the road was in service, a total of 7,500 tons of freight went north to the slope. All of it the hard way. To the men slogging it out behind the wheel of a truck, it meant 18 to 20 hours a day. The going rate was $950 a week. Some who owned their rigs failed to make any money at all. Breakdowns were costly. If they were lucky, it was only a busted sprig. The previous February, a storm-bound convoy had holed up at Anaktuvuk Pass for 18 hours, while the temperature dropped to 60 below zero. And on a return run in April, they had plowed through 12 inches of water running across the Yukon ice. In the meantime, there was a load to haul, and the contract said to get it there. How was up to them. Ahead of them, the John River drains the southern extremities of Anaktuvuk Pass, flowing 100 miles or so to the muskeg bogs of the upper Koyukuk. The same area through which another more lasting road would be built to replace this one, which now wound across the virgin silence of Alaska's vast interior. Rugged, impermanent, and unbeautiful. But like the country through which it passed, belonging to the strong. Sidney Lawrence Auditorium, Anchorage, Alaska. For sale, 400,000 acres of state land, almost all of which had been rejected once before by the oil industry, who could have purchased it then for about $1 an acre. This time, the going rate was $900 million. And the first bid was for more than the U.S. had paid for Alaska when they bought it from Russia. Facing a crisis in all forms of energy, Alaska again stood at the crossroads. Valdez had been selected as the most northerly ice-free port for the proposed pipeline, an 800-mile corridor, which would also pave the way for the greatest land scramble America has ever seen. For along with the belated federal response to Alaska native land claims, environmental quality had also become a politically significant issue. And work in the pipeline was halted until some answers could be found.
The first significant thing was the great excitement of the Alaska oil find in 1968 and 69, and the terrific feeling of optimism that everybody had that here was a tremendous oil field and it was going to require tremendous effort to move the oil out of Alaska. The second great impression, I think, must have been the tremendous letdown when we got stymied in the courts and the whole thing ground to a halt.
The attention of the U.S. again centered on the rim of the Arctic, and a question which has frequently gone unanswered in more familiar regions. Could the search for energy be compatible with man's environment?
Like everybody else, I had a lot of apprehensions of what would actually happen, simply because nobody, I don't think any person anywhere in the North had encountered anything like this. It was something that we had over the years, we had to find out. And in order to do that, I say we had to start at the base and find some sort of a base to work from. And this is where I started in 1969. I still believe that if you have a resource within an area, a resource that is needed for the whole country in a whole, then I think you should develop it, but I think you should do it in such a way that it won't disrupt the environment too much. And I think this is how Prudhoe Bay has gone. It's a model. It's a real model in cleanliness and the way it has been developed. And I think if more people had a chance to see it before it was developed and see it now, would be pleased with the way that actually the thing has been done. And I think most of the oil companies in Alaska will agree that without that freeze, they would have been doing things as they went along, rather than having engineered and planned for before they started it. And I think everybody accepts this. And I think it was probably the best thing that ever happened to it. It cost a lot of money, but I think in the long run, it probably has saved them money. They feel that the freeze was a good thing.
Flying in from Fairbanks, we landed a dead horse as we had 4 years before. A 737 looking as familiar now as it did then, when the oil field roustabouts had nicknamed it Fat Albert. It was midsummer, and bathed in almost continual daylight, the ARCO facility was an island of production pads, power plants, and operational housing, built well above permafrost, and still wearing a slightly vacant look, as though not yet geared to the rising tide of development. Along with the Atlantic Richfield Company, the British Petroleum Alaska Corporation had been selected as developers of the oil field for 10 participating firms. And on the BP side of the field, the champagne bubbles had scarcely settled from the dedication of the new base camp. Boasting AstroTurf and a 3-story solarium, the modular structure had been launched in Seattle and barged to its present location. With it, something new had been added in the way of North Slope architecture. A $21 million experiment in how complete a facility you could create in an alien atmosphere. However, since the daily transient rate was somewhere around $150, and despite the enticement of the world's farthest north swimming pool, we made our departure as unobtrusive as possible, with all due respect to an expense account, which already had begun to feel the impact of Alaska's oil boom economy. Construction had also been started on the first pump station. The initial stage in the oil's 800-mile journey to Valdez, through the steel lifeline, which had been designed to tap the northern rim of the Arctic. Spring of '74 marked the start of the 360-mile pipeline access road to Fairbanks. Beyond Fairbanks, existing highway would be used to the termination point at Valdez. Roughly paralleling the pipeline, the haul road proved to be a major battle all its own. Take the detail of realigning a road prior to construction and changing the site of a construction camp simply to avoid peregrine falcon nests more than a mile away, or struggling to erect enough camps with enough beds to house the workers, who, despite the high rate of pay, had problems of their own.
When you're working a set shift of 7/10s, you'll be getting 40 hours straight time, 30 hours time and a half. So it can be 84 hours of the week, and that's about $1,400. And after taxes, it'll be about $800 a week take home. It got lonesome. Sure, it got lonesome, but it was worth it.
Competition ran high. Camps kept daily tallies on their efforts, challenging nearby camps to surpass them, bragging about their progress. Manning the camps and equipment moved during the winter. 4 contractors working on 8 road segments pressed north and south, building the road as rapidly as possible from one material site to the next. Tackling the Brooks Range, a spectacular jumble of barren peaks, the route was no longer subject to the contorted patterns of permafrost. Now the problem was solid rock. Meantime, construction material was ferried across the Yukon during the summer, while work proceeded on the bridge. Built by the state of Alaska, with Alyeska contributing to the cost, initial stages included the building of temporary trestle out to the point where the first pier would be located. The pipeline would be attached to the bridge once it was completed. The Yukon was the final obstacle in the completion of the access road. And although completion of the state highway from the Yukon River to Prudhoe was a major objective of the year, work also progressed on every other phase of the project, which by now was costing something around $3 million per day.
We've had to look at the pipeline route mile by mile for many reasons. We've had to take into account fish streams and wildlife movement, and we have also developed a very comprehensive oil spill contingency plan. We have had to look at this route mile by mile in a way which has never been done before. 2 million barrels a day of oil going through this system means a lot of money going through that pipeline per day. And obviously the oil companies are not going to invest $6.5 billion and then run the risk of losing even a day or two's production.
Although a major part of the construction manpower was assigned to the road, camps, pump stations, and the terminal here at Valdez, a major effort was also undertaken to develop and test methods and machinery for building the pipeline once its actual construction began. torching off the protective coating inside the 48-inch pipe. The pipes are made ready to be transported to intermediate storage yards. Some 800 miles of pipe have been stockpiled at Prudhoe, Fairbanks, and Valdez, which would serve as distribution centers along the route of construction. At double jointing facilities built at Fairbanks and Valdez, 40-foot joints of pipe were welded together for movement to pipeline construction points as 80-foot units, requiring the use of special oversized trucks. All movement now will be subject to the demands of a hostile winter. And as Fairbanksans fretted over skyrocketing costs and the stresses being caused by pipeline construction, the massive relay began. While work continued on the bridge itself, the opening of 2 ice bridges across the Yukon in November, 2 months earlier than expected, permitted a steady flow of material throughout the winter, with 50 to 100 trucks moving north over the ice bridge every day. Hauled across to construction sites north of the Yukon were insulation for work pads, 60 to 80-foot lengths of pipe, vertical pipe support material, camp housing units, and large quantities of heavy construction equipment. Other pipelines have been built before, but none under such rigid environmental stipulations or in such varied and rugged terrain. Still ahead, the frozen snow-packed spine of the Brooks Range, and the pass known as Attigan. Despite temperatures that plunged to a minus 66 degrees along the northern part of the route, 6 new camps were built, bringing the pipeline camp total to 18. Work pad construction was also started to support the heavy equipment necessary to the laying of the pipe. As the 5th camp down from Prudhoe, Coldfoot comes by its name honestly. Typical of an Alaska which has seen it all before, and now must give way to the inpouring of another gold rush. Braced against certain inexorable forces which threaten the old way of life, if there is a consensus on the maturing frontier of Alaska, it is that whatever is done should be planned first. And within the state itself, it's hard to find an Alaskan, whatever his personal feelings on the boom, who isn't looking out beyond the pipeline to what might follow in the late 70s and beyond.
Looking back on it, it's easy to think that we should have foreseen that we would have the problems first with native claims and then with the environmentalists. The other thing is the way the cost of this pipeline has changed from something around $1 billion when I first was involved to what is now around $6.5 billion. That's a tremendous increase, and while a lot of that is due to inflation, a lot of it is also the result of our failure, the oil industry's failure, if you like, to realize just what building a pipeline across Alaska really means.
The installation of the first mainline pipe took place on the lower end at Tonsina River, with E.L. Patton, president of the Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, present for the dedication.
It's not the longest by any means. There are number of pipelines, particularly in the Middle East and in the USSR, of 1,000 miles or more. Probably the longest in North America is the interprovincial pipeline, which stretches from Edmonton down to Chicago area, which must be 1,500 miles long. So it's not the longest. It's a large diameter pipe. 48 inches is the largest diameter pipe ever laid in the United States. In fact, there are not many pipelines in the world of that diameter, not oil pipelines anyway.
Reaching the Yukon, material destined for pipeline construction can now be carried across by hovercraft, a means of conveyance which facilitated large-scale movement. In the meantime, work proceeded on the State Highway Bridge. To keep the project rolling on schedule, Alyeska and its 5 pipeline contractors had organized construction into a tightly controlled assembly line basis. To make certain that equipment, material, and men were always in the right place at the right time, detailed construction schedules have been prepared on almost every foot of the project, and a special computer-supported scheduling control system have been established at Alyeska headquarters in Anchorage to monitor the entire effort. But the success of the construction effort north of the Yukon, however, leaned heavily on the services of the hovercraft. Operating in overlapping layers of government approvals, construction for both buried and elevated pipe starts with a work pad. A total of 7 passes progressively butt weld each joint. The most difficult of the basic problems, however, is permafrost, thus arising the need for the elevated steel superstructure, which supports nearly half of the pipeline, calling for the development of new techniques and equipment. To forestall the problem of earthquake damage and changes in temperature, a zigzag pattern allows the pipe to move sideways on rollers as it expands and contracts. Drilling to set the VSMs, or vertical support members, one is conscious of a smell like ancient silage, the permanently frozen residue of vegetation which flourished prior to the Ice Age. To maintain the soil in a frozen condition, devices filled with a refrigerant are insulted in pairs within the vertical supports. Roughly 70% of the vertical supports will contain such heat pipes. Prototype drilling rigs range from simple auger-type machines to huge compression types used in oil well drilling and costing upwards of $1 million. In the meantime, planned material movements during the year define the scope of the effort, tripling the rate of the previous year to 897,000 tons. During the peak season, construction personnel increased to 23,000, 10% of which are women.
At first it was very tense with women around there. There were men who would see a woman and go up to her and say, well, whose job are you stealing? You know? And a woman would come back with something just as sharp and just as appropriate for him. Now it's just regarded as nothing new, no big deal.
Lacking X-ray vision, and despite thousands of soil bore samplings, Both buried and elevated modes require constant confirmation, which at times dictated a complete redesign, with transitions between elevated and buried pipe sometimes alternating like a roller coaster. Carrying fill to the advancing edge of the work surface, haulers occasionally got too close, and hardly a day passed without a few such incidents. "400 miles of pipeline will be buried in the conventional manner, using tested techniques, and only in those areas where heat from the pipe will not create unstable soil conditions. Despite the unexpected and the unanticipated, the primary concern is always pipeline integrity. As the northern terminus for the Trans-Alaska Pipeline System, Pump Station number 1 will be located within a dike system, which will contain the total amount of oil held in the tanks in the event of a rupture. Its two 210,000-gallon tanks accommodating differences in flow rate between the incoming oil and that pumped into the pipeline. The primary thrust now was on steel erection. Here at Prudhoe, the oil will be measured, accounting for the amount of oil that any producing company transfers to Alaska, and also making it possible to account for all the oil passing through the system. Although the probability of a major oil spill is remote, the possibility of an accident will always exist to some degree. As a result, the entire line will be monitored by a central computer center at Valdez, which will scan the entire system every 10 seconds. Backup systems will include a microwave hookup, and certain points along the line will also be connected by satellite. In the initial stage of the operation, 600,000 barrels per day, only 5 pump stations will be used. The ultimate capacity of 2 million barrels per day will require 12. Receiving its initial push from pump station number 1, the oil will be transported to the southern terminal at Valdez, where work was already well underway toward completing 6 of the initial 18 crude oil storage tanks. Designed so as to be virtually immune to the 3 possible sources of significant damage: tidal waves, earthquake, and fires, the Valdez terminal will offer good protection from winds and the open sea to the approximately 20 ships which are ultimately expected to be loaded here each week. While weather, of course, still remains an implacable enemy, yielding only now and then to a pilot's personal Alaska know-how, navigation aids around the airstrips and a system of radio and telephone relay stations provide pilots with constant up-to-date weather reports, landing instructions, and good advice. Arriving again at Prudhoe in '75, we were part of a passenger list that now includes 600 to 700 passengers daily, oil field workers as well as tourists. As in each of our previous visits, we were escorted by Tom Brennan of Atlantic Richfield, who had flown in from Anchorage to meet us. Our objective, a tour of the area, plus the latest progress report. Still to be settled is how to handle the 26.9 trillion feet of natural gas locked in with the oil.
BP has drilled quite a few more wells than we have. We shut down our drilling during the slowdown while we were waiting for the pipeline permit. So we drilled no wells, except exploratory wells, for approximately 2.5 years. So BP has close to 60 wells on their side of the field, and we have 28. And we need 65 wells on each side of the field. That's not a problem. It just, if you need more wells, you put more rigs to work. We'll have our 65 wells and perhaps a few more. With next year's barge shipment, we'll be able to put the field into production. And that'll be in 600,000 barrels a day in 1977. The reservoir is by far the largest ever discovered in North America, and we have enough there, certainly, to justify the development. It is an economic situation. I couldn't say at this point what the wellhead costs will be when we reach the completion stage. Hopefully there will be some room left over for a profit. The field will probably produce anywhere from, say, 30 to 50 years.
As the summer comes to an end, the workforce will decline and will not reach 20,000 again until sometime next summer. The pipeline work level will be lower then compared to 75, but the terminal workforce will be larger, thus the new modular housing units. As to the future, some say Prudhoe is just a drop in the ocean. No one really knows. For like gold, oil is where you find it. Yet in Alaska, where the lines of supply are stretched perilously thin at times, witness the latest battle with the offshore ice pack. The story is only beginning.
We're very interested in the Gulf of Alaska, Lower Cook Inlet, the western Gulf of Alaska, the Kodiak Shelf, St. George Basin, offshore North Slope in the Beaufort Sea. And eventually there will also be, I'm sure, drilling in the Bering and Chukchi Seas. Alaska is one of the most promising petroleum areas in the world right now.
In the meantime, for thousands of men and women who live and work in the 18 camps along the 800-mile Alyeska pipeline, winter approaches with cold and darkness. Most of the construction and supply contracts for the massive summer effort have already been negotiated. And in those areas where schedules lag, extra efforts are expected to make up the difference. This much was for sure. From where we stood, the pipe was heading south. And by October 26th, a week earlier than the targeted deadline, half of all construction, indicated by the black lines, was completed. Also finished was the Yukon River Bridge, considerably ahead of schedule. The first oil is expected to flow by 1977, entering the line at Prudhoe and pushed by 8 pump stations. It will reach Valdez 7½ days later, the start of a 1.2 million barrel a day energy supply. Ultimate capacity, 2 million barrels a day for at least 15 years. Leaving Valdez, tanker traffic will be controlled much as an airport controls traffic. Valdez Narrows will be limited to 1 tanker at a time. In larger Prince William Sound, opposing lines of tanker traffic will be kept 2 miles apart.
We are basically on schedule in the sense that we are confident that we can achieve the target date of July 1977.
We expect there is a lot more oil to be found there. We hope to find it ourselves. I think you'll find the North Slope of Alaska is going to be in the news for a long time to come.
The activity that now dominates all else is the construction of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline that will augment the oil supply to the lower 48 by some 2 million barrels per day. But the real key to America's future oil independence may well lie in less visible developments, in the struggle to awaken the sleeping energy giant known as Alaska. Next week, another exciting true life adventure. I hope you'll join us. Till then, this is Don McCune reminding you that it's all an Exploration Northwest.
As happy as a butterclap when tides are high, I sing a grateful ode to Puget Sound, the land of everything. I love it from Tulalip, from Puyallup, swim and fish, and to the Dosey Wallops where so many times I've fished.
I was supposed to have some brown bread today.
Yep.
Okay.
From Brennan to the Bogoshiel, from Lemmy to Lapush, and from the lordly Salda to the lovely Duck Bush. From Samish to Sammamish, from Suquamish to Quilcene, the climate is so friendly, it's a land that's evergreen. There's Jimacum and Stillicum, where spouts the gooey duck, the singing Stillaguamish and swirling Skookumchuck, and Moclips and Copalis, where the razor clams abound. A little bit of heaven is a shack on Puget Sound. There's peace on the Skokomish, on the Queets, and on the Hoe. There's calm on the Nisqually, born of ageless ice and snow. A land that nature loves so much, she stays a whole year round. I'd trade a royal palace for a shack on Puget Sound.